Manly Hall Official is glad to produce, publish and offer the Astrology of the Human Face. According to the philosophical teachings of the ancients, all natural forms are built up by progressive repetition of fundamental patterns. Small bodies are miniatures of great bodies, differing in quantity rather than in quality, and in appearance rather than in fact. Thus, an atom is a miniature universe, and the universe, likewise, is a great atom. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. The most natural of all universal forms is the sphere, the most perfect of symmetrical solids and the ancient symbol of divine bodies. Pythagoras taught that the gods are spherical in form. Life moves from a primordial state which is spherical, to an ultimate state which is likewise spherical, but in the interval between the first and the last, organisms pass through environments of various kinds which temporarily condition, modify, and/or distort the natural spherical forms. The human body, for example, according to the most ancient teachings of the mystical schools, was originally globe-like. The center of consciousness, being located in the midst of the globe, was equidistant from all parts of the circumference, and dominated its organism according to the most reasonable of all patterns. The processes of adjustment between evolving lives and their external physical environments resulted in the modification of man's spherical form until it achieved its present asymmetrical proportions. The center of consciousness with man is no longer in the center of his body. This has greatly increased human susceptibility to injuries and disease. It requires a greater time for the impulse of pain to reach the brain from the extremities than from the more proximate parts. The result is a wide variety of minor injuries, such as burns, which occur before the warning impulse has been carried through the extensions of the nervous system. The ancient teachings further emphasize that the body itself is a symbol of the consciousness evolving through it. Any important change in man's inner disposition is reflected outwardly through the quality, proportion, appearance, and function of the bodily parts. The body itself is a compound structure composed of innumerable smaller bodies, of which the cell is the common denominator. Organs and tissues have been built up from aggregates of cells, and each of these compound structures is, in turn, a greater cell and an indispensable member in the human economy. Each of the parts is stamped with the symbol of the entirety. If we possessed the necessary knowledge, we could analyze the entire temperament and disposition of the human being from any one of the infinitely small units which make up his pattern. Research along this line has already extended some distance into the mystery. It is now claimed that a single drop of blood is sufficient for diagnosis of the health of the whole body, and from this drop it is possible even to localize the areas of the body affected by the disease. Temperament, nervous reflexes, organic structure, sexual differentiation, age, habits, and inclinations may be discovered from the examination of a single hair. More about the private life can be ascertained from an analysis of a piece of human fingernail than most people could discover from a lifetime of association. Minute discolorations set up by numerous causes in various parts of the iris of the eye are susceptible of classification and interpretation in reference to health and disease in any part of the body. Leonardo da Vinci called the human eye a microcosm, or miniature of the whole body. A microscopic analysis of a cross-section of the human teeth will tell us much about the life of a man as tree rings will reveal about the history of trees. A single exhalation of the breath, if it could be captured in an appropriate medium, would tell the life story of the individual. The human consciousness is an exceptionally potent force. It impresses its will and purpose upon every tissue of the body which it inhabits. This is what Bohm called the signatura rerum, the autograph of the soul. Aristotle referred to the human head as a heavenly world separated from the body by a slender isthmus called the neck. Every organ and system of the entire body is repeated in the brain, which is a microcosm, a kind of archetype. The remainder of the body is an extension of the brain downward toward the earth, a sort of crystallization around the vibrant thread of the spinal cord. In ancient philosophies there are numerous references to the vaulted chambers of the brain. Here are rooms and caverns, and in this palace upon the summit of the flesh are the princes and rulers of man's corporeal existence. Always seeking to protect and preserve, nature has surrounded the sensitive centers of the brain with the heavy walls of the skull, the most complete protection accorded to any part of the body. In remote ages, during its evolutionary process, the brain caused to emerge from itself a series of sensory extensions. These sensitive extensions were clothed in organic structures suitable to their manifestation and function in the material world. The consequence of these objectified influences within the brain was the human face, which is really the medium of sensory expression plus respiration and alimentation. As the sense perceptions bear witness to the degree of development which has been achieved by the mind, they largely dominate every phase of human activity and define the boundaries of man's ethical, moral, and reflective faculties. The sense of feeling is the only one of man's five senses that is not localized in the face, but even this system of reflexes is especially acute in the facial area. From time immemorial, man has naturally selected the face as the most appropriate attribute to typify the character of the individual. We instinctively judge human beings according to their facial peculiarities, and have marveled at the infinite diversity of expression of which the face is capable. A famous sculptor once said that the face presents the greatest enigma in the world of art. As he expressed it, all faces are similar yet utterly and indescribably different. Eyes, noses, mouths, and ears are usually in the same relationships to each other, yet no two faces are exactly alike. In addition to the minor structural differences of size, coloring, and arrangements, there is the mysterious overtone of expression, of fleeting mystery, and ever-changing shadowing of internal impulses. A number of astrologers, recognizing the relationship between the features and the disposition, have developed extraordinary proficiency in reading the elements of a horoscope from the human face. The process is quite reasonable and logical. By their combinations and positions, signs and planets modify dispositional qualities. The face reveals these dispositional qualities through structure and expression. Therefore, the face reveals the position and relationship of the planets. Astrology of the Human Face and Head. Searching through old writings and piecing together hints from the various astrological systems of the world, I have assembled a number of interesting opinions and speculations which may inspire thoughtful astrologers to a more detailed consideration of the astrology of the human face and head. The distribution of the head among the signs of the zodiac according to one old savant. The signs from Aries through Virgo, known as the extraversional signs, are assigned to the face, the truly objective part of the brain. The remaining signs, Libra through Pisces, known to the ancients as the dark, or hidden, half of the zodiac, govern that part of the head in which the brain processes are entirely hidden or concealed by the skull. This arrangement does not agree exactly with phrenology, but the differences are apparent rather than real, as thoughtfulness will demonstrate. Thus, the sign Aries governs the area from the highest point of the skull forward to approximately the hairline. With Aries, rising or sun position, men, this area is frequently marked by a form of side baldness. The hairline retires early on each side of the head in this area. A typical example is Abraham Lincoln. The hairline itself and the forehead are ruled by Taurus. Frequently, a low hairline and the so-called widow's peak are prominent in the case of Taurus natives. As an example for analysis, the distribution of planetary power is indicated by the furrows or wrinkles on the human forehead. In elderly persons, these creases are well seated by temperamental emphasis over a period of years, but they are present in everyone. The newborn babe, wrinkling its face in displeasure, reveals the same arrangement of furrows that is more obvious in the aged man. To read these lines in a face where they are not otherwise visible, it is only necessary to raise the eyebrows, and they will immediately appear. The early Christian mystic, Saint Hildegard of Bingen, wrote that God, in his infinite wisdom, had traced the orbits of the planets on the human forehead, so that man might know their works. Jerome Cardan, in his rare work on physiognomy, declared that the number of horizontal lines on the forehead should be 7, and that each line is assigned to a planet in an ascending order, according to the arrangement of Claudius Ptolemy. The line nearest to the eyebrows is under the rulership of the Moon, the next under Mercury, and then follow Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. After the pattern has been well set in the mind, it is possible to interpret these lines according to certain peculiarities. The lines may be broken, or partly or entirely absent. They may be ornamented with stars, creases, or cut by diagonal lines. They may slope or turn abruptly and bisect adjacent lines. They may be long or short, deep or shallow, near to each other or widely spaced. It is usual for that line to be most prominent or to have the most complications associated with it, which agrees with the ruling planet of the horoscope. Thus, a native born under Saturn would have emphasis upon the line of Saturn, one under Mars, emphasis upon the line of Mars, and so on. The absence of one or more lines must be ascertained by proportioning the interval between the line of the Moon and the line of Saturn. Accidental marks, such as scars, moles, or blotches, upon these lines, or in the intervals between them, generally agree with unusual combinations of planets in the horoscope itself. Thus, the forehead becomes a miniature of the face, and each part of the face reflects all the other parts. In an old Chinese manuscript, I found an account of the parts of the mouth ruled by the 7 planets, and how these 7 parts were again reflected in the structure of the lips and in the small vertical creases in the texture of the lips and the adjacent parts of the face. The nose, likewise, and the ears each have 7 distinct parts under the rulership of the planetary powers. One Oriental physiognomist whom I knew explained at great length the distribution of the planets according to the structure of the jaw and how it is possible for the Chinese to discover which tooth will be most subject to decay according to the malefics in the horoscope. A division of the face according to the cardinal, fixed, and common signs. This division assigns the upper third of the head to the cardinal signs, which are termed executive and distribute the creative powers of the mentality. Weight of the cardinal signs is determinable from an analysis of the breadth and height of the head above the ridge of the nose and the top of the ears. Size should not always be regarded as indicative of power, though it may be so if other factors confirm the opinion. Proportion is more vital than size. Harmony of parts is indicative of executive ability. Organic quality, skin texture, fineness of the hair, and the direction in which the hair lies are important, as is also the artificial factor of the arrangement of the hair according to personal taste. Taste is an indication of character. The fixed signs are assigned to the lower part of the face. It has long been a superstition that a strong jaw represents an obstinate will, and the profiles of many of our more willful personalities rather substantiate this adage. Consider the obstinate chin of Benito Mussolini, a Leo native. Fixed signs also find their expression in the size and shape of the mouth, the thinness of the lips, and the compression of the jaw. Those of fixed purpose frequently clench their teeth instinctively because of the symbolic relationship between the jaw and the power of determination. Very heavy markings extending from the sides of the nose down around the corners of the mouth are likewise valuable indices of fixed temperament. The common signs occupy the middle section of the face, including the zone of the ears and nose, the cheekbones, and the structure under the eyes. The length of this central area is important in the intellectual face, which is only regarded as long because it gives the appearance of narrowness. The ear, by its size and the structure of its lobe, indicates versatility. The breadth of the face in the central zone reflects the adjustability of the common sign temperament. All three zones extend to the back of the head and have their corresponding areas among the frontological centers. Groupings of planets in the triplicities and physiognomy. Groupings of planets in the triplicities usually result in some distortion in the corresponding section of the face. It is necessary to bear in mind, however, that any one factor has more than one interpretation, and all readings based upon physiognomy and phrenology must result from the balancing of the testimony of several factors. The successful character analyst must therefore develop an acute sense of proportion and arrangement, learning to estimate the effect of one dominant group upon another group of equal dominance. Nor must they consider an area weak because it is less in size than some adjacent area. All estimation must be based upon the radial length from the center of the brain itself. Here I presents a different division of the face, according to the artistic canon of Michelangelo, with some slight modifications. Here, the head is divided into zones according to the 5 elements recognized by the ancients. The highest part of the head is assigned to ether, the mysterious quinta essentia, or fifth essence, of medieval alchemy. The zone of ether corresponds to the area of synthesis, those parts of the brain whose duty it is to combine knowledge and to distill from it the element of spiritual appresensitiveness. The intellectual power of the brain, that is, the objective and reflective faculties, is assigned to the element of air. We cannot but remember that the ancients believed thinking to be caused by a mysterious vapor circulating in the ventricles and orifices of the brain. The respiratory area is assigned to fire, and this zone includes sight. The breath of life was not attributed to the element of air by the ancients, because they regarded it as a vehicle of the anima, or soul, a fiery spirit. The mouth, with its natural salivas and moisture, they assigned to water as the most ancient of all symbols of nutrition. The lower part of the jaw and throat were given to the element of earth, because earth receives all into itself and is the proper symbol of the physical body, which supports, as upon a base, the more attenuated elements in their functions. The arrangement of these zones corresponds to the proportions of the body itself. Thus, the earth zone in the head agrees with that part of the lower body which extends from the feet to the knees. Water corresponds to the bodily zone between the knees and the diaphragm. Fire corresponds to the zone between the diaphragm and the throat, including the heart. The element of air was given general rulership over the entire zone from the throat to the center of the forehead, and ether retains only the crown of the head as its allotment. The older students of this subject believe that any mark or scar on the body would have its equivalent marking on some part of the face. Also, an injury to any part of the body, as a wound, bruise, or accident, would ultimately modify some part of the facial appearance or structure. The zodiac used in constructing the features of the human face. While such a design may appear at first fantastic, it deserves very careful consideration. The more we think about this arrangement, the more it intrigues the mind. The diagram is comparatively self-explanatory, and only meditation upon its implications can reveal the meanings. It may be much more than superstition to believe that all the forms which go to make up facial and bodily structure are based upon the hieroglyphical forms of the constellations. The distribution of the face according to the Ptolemaic order of the planets. The sun is given the point between the eyes, which the phrenologist calls the seat of individuality. The superior planets are given the 3 superior zones: Mars, observation; Jupiter, reflection; and Saturn, contemplation. The lower zones of emotion, Venus, expression; Mercury, and imagination; the Moon, are, in reality, the lower octaves of the superior faculties. But individuality, in the midst of them, has no octave, and the sun becomes, so to speak, the axis of the face. The observational power of Mars is reflected in the emotional nature of Venus, the reflective power of Jupiter is reflected in the expressive power of Mercury, and the imaginative faculty of the Moon is the lower octave of the contemplative faculty of Saturn. The serious student cannot but be intrigued by these obvious relationships, and we believe that a study of them will prove both useful and profitable. Most of all, it may reveal the wonderful order and harmony present everywhere in the world and among all the parts of living things. Astrodiagnosing the 100% American. According to astrology, the constellation of Gemini, which is ascending in the horoscope of the United States, sets forth the composite temperament of the American people. The American college boy is intellectually and emotionally a Gemini type. When this college boy grows old, he does not necessarily grow up, for he carries his juvenile eccentricities into his mature years. The Gemini youth has the arrow collar man face, the collegiate slouch, and a certain air of languor about him. He is the young sophisticate who at 17 has done everything and been everywhere. There is really nothing left for the average sophomore but to die. He has exhausted all other possibilities. For some time, this type of the genus Homo sapiens affected the balloon, or baby Zeppelin, pants, those famous trousers that move only once for every 3 steps taken by the wearer. The immature Gemini is bold, affected, physically awkward, emotionally style-conscious, and intellectually unconscious. He radiates an air of worldly wisdom and has the unique distinction of knowing everything and nothing simultaneously. The Gemini type can absorb a considerable amount of education but is at a loss to know what to do with it after it has been acquired. For lack of application, his education rapidly deteriorates, hence, we find the youth enthusiastic and ambitious but not profound. When intellectualism is present, it inclines the mind to speculate in matters entirely beyond its depth, which often results in a most objectionable case of opinionatedness. Gemini is mechanical, inventive, and somewhat scientific. It usually learns, to its sorrow, that the highest form of art is the elimination of the unnecessary. Gemini must forget nearly all that it has learned in order to know anything. After such a youth has completed his 4 years at college, he generally corrects the situation, however, and after years of contact with the actual problems of existence, the individual discards his useless attitudes and concentrates upon the practical responsibilities of life. Occasionally, an exception is found to this delineation of the Gemini type. The real student is rare. The typical Gemini works as little as he can, crams at the last moment, and his whole college life is just one frat after another. This may be considered a rather hypercritical analysis of the national personality, but the thought we wish to convey is that, for the most part, our people are well-meaning but superficial. We are a race bored to distraction and as tired of ourselves as we are of everything else. We are also becoming very fatalistic, for we are convinced that no effort on our part will have much effect upon existing conditions. The average election shows that we are bored with politics, and the half-empty churches reveal that we are bored with religion. We have almost entirely given up the hope of recovery from the boredom of our jaded nerves and emotions. With his superiority complex, the American instinctively swaggers and gazes patronizingly from the heights of his self-esteem. We do not mean that these traits are common to every individual. The great level, however, if you wish to call it such, is made up of persons who madly read their morning papers and promptly forget any vital news that may have accidentally been published. The average citizen, however, seldom reads the news, for he barely has time to skip through the sporting section, the comic strips, and the financial returns. Then another Gemini trait is very marked in the penal 1s Homo Americanal 1s. Every individual wants to reform something, not always because of his overwhelming desire for human betterment but rather because of his overwhelming self-confidence, which leads him to believe that a thing will never be well done until he does it. Hence, we have reforms for everyone except the reformers themselves. Gemini is strongly journalistic. This country is swayed by journalism, and thousands have no opinions except those written by their favorite column writer. Gemini also controls advertising, and nearly all of us are victimized by the advertiser. Gemini carries a surface culture and produces the proletarian blue blood, or mushroom aristocracy. Hence the new orders of nobility, the beef barons, the chewing gum kings, the lords of frenzied finance, and the peers of soaps and safety razors. Gemini further brings with it the great American disease, nerves. According to the ancient astrologers, Mercury controls the nervous system. A nation ruled by this planet must consequently be intense, high-strung, restless, and fidgety. The nervous excitement of our civilization is, therefore, a thoroughly Gemini quality. Gemini is more or less superficial, recovering quickly from disappointments and disillusionments, which accounts for the fact that the American can lose his money with more sang-froid than any other national type. This lack of profound reflection is further evidenced by the fact that you can come back to the man you robbed yesterday and rob him again today. If you wish to sell the Gemini a gold brick, it is only necessary to wrap it up in a new kind of package, tell him his neighbor has just bought one, and the rest is easy. The average American will lose everything that he has, proceed to make another pile, and then lose that as naively as a child. The Gemini American is the easiest believer on earth. He depends hopelessly upon authority. It is too much of an intellectual problem for him to analyze whether the authority quoted knows any more about it than he does. At the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the fixed star, Capella, was in conjunction with the eastern horizon. From Ptolemy, the Egyptian astrologer, we learn that Capella is a most powerful star and that its keyword is love of novelty. 2,000 years do not seem to have changed the influence of that star. Is it possible to conceive of a nation more given over to novelty than the United States? To do the same thing twice is to commit a lax pas. To do it 3 times is to be ostracized as impossible. In every walk of society, we are intoxicated with the new. We can live in one apartment house only long enough to permit a new one to be built so that we can move into that. A big percentage of the Los Angeles population moves monthly, and apartments over 2 years old are becoming increasingly difficult to rent. If our car is 6 months old, we are ashamed of it. If it is 2 years old, it is an antique, without, however, the inflated value generally attached to antiques. One of our great problems seems to be to determine just when a thing ceases to be junk and becomes an antique. In the motion picture field, it is unthinkable to see the same picture twice. The Metropolitan Opera Company is concerned with a serious dilemma. The public is bored with the old opera plots, and this great musical institution may come to an ignominious end because Americans cannot write acceptable new operas. We may blame Capella, therefore, for dance marathons, donut-eating contests, flagpole sitting, flying endurance records, as well as the newest form of mania, miniature golfitis. In the horoscope of the United States, the Sun, which represents the power, influence, and affluence of the government, is in conjunction with Sirius, the dog star. Upon the authority of Ptolemy, we learn that when this star conjuncts the luminaries or the angles, it indicates that the subject of the nativity is destined to be the guardian, protector, counselor, or preceptor of others. Hence, the American people have always regarded themselves as the natural protectors of weak or persecuted nations. The paternal attitude of Sirius is represented by the Monroe Doctrine, which is an integral part of our political idealism. The place of the Sun in the American chart is extremely significant. It is placed in Cancer, the sign of the people. The presence of the sign of government in the house of the people is the proper astrological background for democracy. Thus we have a government always of the people, sometimes by the people, and, on still rarer occasions, for the people. Further investigation discovers the Sun to be in the 2nd house, described by the ancients as the house of finance, speculation, and investment. The place of the Sun reveals the great primary urge behind our civilization and tells us that finance is the keynote of our government. With the Sun in the banking house of the zodiac in Cancer upon the cusp of this house, financial returns through navigation, import, export, transportation, speculation, and crops are indicated. As Cancer governs the common people, we find grounds for the popular belief that public resources are continually exploited by private interests. The ethical note of this country is strongly tainted with commercialism, and if our national fabric may be said to be suffering from one disease more than another, it is the disease of money. Among the money-loving and extravagant people of the earth, we occupy first place. We are one of the few nations who love money so well that we will put up with every personal discomfort in the effort to get it. In our craze to make and accumulate money, we undermine our physical well-being to the point where we can no longer enjoy spending money. The average person does not really enjoy his money. We have developed a great competitive system, however, which demands that we accumulate vast and unusable resources if we are to survive. In other words, we kill ourselves in order to get money enough to live. Among some of the Oriental peoples, there is a sort of unwritten code that a man can always starve. Lacking, however, the philosophical background of Asia, we would rather live miserably than die peacefully. The great concentration of this country is upon money. We have eclipsed the legendary horde of Croesus, exiled the Rothschilds to the limbo, and will soon send the old lady of Threadneedle Street to the old folks' home. We may well ask the question of whether there are enough funds in the world to liquidate the intangible assets of our own capitalists. All this indicates that we are a financially minded people, too young in culture to realize that when we have acquired all the gold in the world, there will be nothing left to buy with it. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share to help the channel growth. New videos on a daily basis.